I'm Renee Reyes, Executive in charge of production here at the Paley Center for Media, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's Paley Media Council Paley Dialogue event. It's the first of our spring season here in Los Angeles, and we've got a great program tonight. So I'll introduce our guests. Casey Bloys first joined HBO in 2004 and was named President of Programming in 2016. Over the course of his tenure at the network, Casey has overseen some of the HBO's most acclaimed series, including multiple Emmy winner Veep, Silicon Valley. Yeah, I think all these deserve applause. Girls, Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. Yeah. Along with some of their new series, including Divorce and Crashing. Yeah. Tonight, he's, of course, joined in conversation by Golden Globe nominee Issa Rae, the creator and star of one of the network's newest, yeah, she deserves applause too. Creator and star of one of their newest breakout hits, Insecure. Issa's web series, The Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl, helped pave the way for her HBO series. She's also a New York Times best-selling author, and The Atlantic reviewed Insecure as brilliant, insightful comedy, and we couldn't agree more. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Casey Bloys and Issa Rae.
So thank you guys. Thank you for having us. Let's start. We talked about they mentioned your web series, and I think that you are a success story for many reasons, but I think that you are an inspiration for a lot of people for a new art form or a new path into the industry, which I think is exciting because the barriers to entry are lower now because you wanted to do a show and you went and did a show. There was nobody, there were no structural barriers to, breaking through and getting on staff or working as a PA or, for no money if people can't afford to do it. There are so many barriers, I think, to getting into Hollywood, and you kind of said, hey, I'm going to do a show. I may be idealizing that, but talk a little bit about the decision. I think it's really exciting that today, you can just decide to do a show that you want to do, and you went and did it. So talk about the decision to shoot Awkward Black Girl.
Yeah, I mean, I still was doing a lot of things for no money. A lot of the times, and Awkward Black Girl came about just from trying to break into the industry traditionally, from writing spec scripts, from entering contests, from finding people, you heard the adage, it's not what you know, but who you know. And so I tried to find people to know. And that didn't work out. People in my own family were like, I don't know you. I'm in the industry, but I don't know you like that. And so, timing is everything too. And I felt like I was just ready for my work to be seen in a way. And
did you feel like that trying to break in, because I know it's frustrating under the best of circumstances, did you find it, was Awkward Black Girl like, I'm at the end of my rope, I'm gonna do this, or was it more, why not I give who knows, It
was more by that time. So a lot of people don't know that Awkward Black Girl was actually the third web series I ever put out there. The only one starring me, but like the third one that I attempted, and I did one in college.
The element that was missing in the first.
Not even suggesting that. Like in 2007, I created one about being, Black at Stanford, and that was the first moment where I was like, whoa. There's an audience that's watching my stuff that's more than just my friends, and it spread to other colleges. And I remember then, in 2007, being like, wow, this is kind of an entryway. This is a door. And then graduated from college and did another one in 2009 when I was in LA, just with my brother's group, and treated it like a TV show, in that I was consistent with it, where it came out every Monday at 10 a.m., and I would publicize it, and I would skip hanging out with friends to promote it. And I used those. I think the mistake was using those as a ticket to television and as opposed to making it for the internet. Exactly. Yeah. I treated it as such, and I was like, this is always going to be my step to television. So I'm not taking the internet seriously as a platform itself. And then by the time I got to Awkward Black Girl, after trying to, in my mind, the other two were still commercially viable, but I was being told no. I was like, the first one is about college kids and a different world worked. But I was told, nobody wants to see college shows currently, and and black kids going to college isn't gonna sell. And now, of course, there's Dear White People, but whatever. And then for the second one was just about, guys trying to make it in the music industry in LA, a mockumentary style. And, I referenced Flight of Conchords, and it had a bit of Curb Your Enthusiasm vibe. And it was just like, well, they have to be in a lane. Do they want to be rappers or do they want to be actors? And so by the time I came up with the concept for Awkward Black Girl, I was like, just given the feedback I'm getting, if they don't want these commercially successful hits, they're never gonna come with a show about an awkward black girl. So I was like, this is for the internet specifically, and I'm doing my part because I was frustrated by, the lack of representation that I was seeing.
Well, it's interesting because two things. One, you mentioned Curb, and I know you've mentioned before that was one of your inspirations. And what's interesting about it, Curb, I was just talking to somebody about this with Dave Mandel, who does Veep, but when Curb came out, there was this kind of misunderstanding because it was improv. And so they made it look easy. Mm-hmm. And so you had a lot of knockoffs with people just kind of like getting in front of a camera, improving, but Curb is really detailed outlines, like 15, 16-page detailed outlines. So it's not, the story is really, really worked out, right, but they make it look easy. And what I was gonna say, what you did with Awkward Black Girl, I think is I think it's interesting when you say you embraced the format, and I think it showed, but this is the next thing I wanna ask you about is, you made it look easy, right? You had a web show, and then you kind of developed it and turned it into a TV show. Now, like when Curb came out, we would get all these spec scripts and all of these, it's an improv show. And now we get, well, they did a web show, and so here's their show.
Right, right.
So I think you've made it look very easy, but a lot of work went into, and I want you to talk a little bit about, a web show is really a different kind of form of storytelling than a half hour or an hour show.
Completely.
How was the transition for you? Did you think making a TV show out of the web show would be, just make it 20 minutes longer, or like what was the process like to figure it out for television? Because again, I think you make it look really easy, but I know you worked hard at getting it right.
Well, I think early on, when people were interested in the show, as is, I definitely thought like, oh, well, we'll just make it longer, because even the audience was demanding it to be, longer.
Don't listen to the audience. They don't know what they're.
I've learned that. They know a lot, but there's a lot that they don't know. But even then, like my first episode was like 3 minutes, and I remember just based on experience in the past, like anything longer than that would lose people's attention span. And that was early on, in 2011. So I was tripping out when our second episode was like 5 minutes.
That was too long?
It was too long. It was too long. But then as people started to enjoy the show more, then they, demanded like, I want this to be longer. I want this to be at least 10, and then at least 15, and then our finale ended up being, like 22 to 27 minutes. And then, now I found it just harder to have a shorter, more self-contained shows. People, if they like something, they want to watch more of it. So in trying to transition it to television, I think the rules have kind of changed, because even in working with you guys, the development process, so much stayed the same, but so much, I learned so much, and so much changed just in terms of what my expectations were, and even what I wanted to depict at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I didn't want to just do, especially for that series, by the time, I got to you guys, we had 2 seasons out with 22
right.
episodes, or 24 episodes, possibly more. And I was like, I'm kind of done telling this story. And what appealed to me about just being on HBO period is just the much like the internet, like the raw stories that I could tell. And I was younger when I created that series, and
right.
I had experienced so much more, and had watched so much more television. And whereas I would have credited, like a 30 Rock and a Curb for Awkward Black Girl because of other shows like Louie, and I can't even think of other examples. I knew that I wanted a specific type of
right.
storytelling.
Right. When you were I guess going back to your first web show, like, were there shows that, I mean, you know, as a black woman with her own TV show, you're underrepresented. Were there shows when you were thinking about this that you were, I know you guys referenced Living Single, you know, the girls in Insecure do. Were there shows that you thought, well, look, they did it, or I'd like to do something, you know, did certain shows inspire you as a woman, as a black woman, as what I want to, you know, what you want to put forth into the world?
Yeah, I mean, the entire 90s television influenced me, but that was also in the 90s. It was like 20 years ago. Those shows influenced me. But yeah, we referenced Girlfriends. I remember the first, I always go back to, you know, even the discussions with you guys, is trying to find like the regular black people on television. And the last person I remember was when I was a girl, and when I moved back to LA, it was Moesha. It was Brandy, just being a regular teenage girl,
right.
who I felt like I could relate to. And we didn't really get to see a lot of relatable black people outside of Girlfriends, Living Single, A Different World, and Fresh Prince, and Martin, things like that. And the stakes were always unusually high beyond that. And so I didn't have many reference points for shows of color, of stories that I wanted to tell.
Yeah.
It was always referencing, like, you know, again, I'm just drawing a blank on other shows that are out there.
One thing I was going to ask was the relationship with Issa and Molly is very important. Was that modeled on, you know, somebody specific in your life, or is that more general to the way women support each other, or the way you wish they would? I mean, because for me, that was always what was, besides you starring in it, it was the, I think I referenced this in, like, Golden Girls. To me, Golden Girl, the fantasy of Golden Girls, hear me out. The fantasy, I'm going to make a point. The fantasy of Golden Girls was that you always had your girl, you know, even, you know, at the end, you know, you had your girlfriends with you. And I think that's a very important part of this show, that no matter what Issa and Molly are going through at work, with boyfriend, you know, they're always there. And now Kelly, you know, kind of more, they're always there for each other. Did that develop as it went on, or did you go in thinking, like, I want to show those kind of friendships on TV?
It definitely developed. Like, you can say that. First of all, thank you for being a friend. I'm sorry, guys.
I think we should do a flash forward of Issa, of them like 60 years from now.
I'm gonna shut that down right away. No, even in developing it, I remember having the relationship with Issa and Molly in the script initially, and that was based off of a real life friendship, and a lot of the real life friendships that I have with women, with black women specifically, and wanting to showcase just that kind of dynamic. Because again, a lot of what influenced me to create Awkward Black Girl in the first place was just this negative representation of black women I was seeing on television, and
negative representation in general, or the relationships between them?
The negative representations and the relationships. So a lot of reality shows pitted us against one another, and there was just, you know, there's a lot of conniving and backstabbing, and that just wasn't the relationship that I had with a lot of my female friends and the women in my life. So that was something that I consciously wanted to depict in my own show, because it was also very much true to life. And then I remember as the drafts came in, you guys really responded to that relationship. Yeah. And for me, that opened my eyes, like, wow, this is like, I love telling this part of the story.
I think
so
that was it was one of the things you did that opened it from a web show to a larger show for TV, is both the relationship kind of anchored Molly and Issa's relationship, anchored it, but it opened a whole other world. Mm-hmm. You went into Molly's world, you know, and she's working in a professional, mostly white world, and that's a whole other set of issues. Mm-hmm. We were joking backstage that at table reads, there are there are moments in the scripts where they make fun of white people,
We do.
you know,
Lots of
especially in office settings, and I laugh along with it. But I think it's great. I mean, I was saying one of the things to Issa, I love that the show kind of shows everybody from Issa's point of view. You know, there are things that go on in offices and everyday life that, you know, she notices, and, you know, I wouldn't necessarily notice. And I think that's what's important about the show is, you know, it's your experience, which is different than everybody else's, but also relatable at the same time.
Yeah, and that was something that we wanted to depict as well. Like, I mean, I always said that the show is universal, but it's absolutely specific. You know, it's about these moments that, while it's not about all Black people by any means, it's about a unique Black experience, and there are shared moments, especially in the workplace, that a lot of Black people can relate to, and it's fun to be able to be at these table reads and see like you know, like when a joke happens.
She feels
and
bad
we'll
for
discuss
me.
That. So, I mean, I'm just like, we're not laughing at you, we're laughing with you. But it's moments like that. It feels like we're kind of making it. I've had so many people come to me from different backgrounds and other white people to be like, I was that girl at work. I was asking if I could touch somebody's hair, and I didn't know that was an issue. And is this how people feel about me, or should I, you know, should I just shut the fuck up? And it is. The answer is generally yes, you should. But it's a lot of fun to be able to have those conversations in the writers' room, and just, you know, and our writers' room is you know, people come from all different backgrounds, just, you know, whether they're older or younger, and to have those conversations, like, we're really telling human stories, and that really helps to for the relatability aspect, at least.
All right, let's talk about you specifically a little bit.
We haven't been doing that?
No. I mean, outside of the show, two things I always, I have been fortunate enough to work with people who, you know, when you have a show, you know, obviously the world opens up a little bit. So I'm curious, you're the boss, right? How have you found, you know, you call the shots on the show, it's your voice. I mean, and it's a lot. You know, how I think that you wear your authority very well, but how is it? Do you?
I have a partner in it. You know, I have an amazing showrunner, Prentice Penny, and it's really helpful to be able to, because I hadn't run a TV show before, and to have someone who has come up through it traditionally, you know, just in writer's room, starting off as a writer's assistant, and now, you know, being a showrunner, and is extremely gracious and you know, takes his ego out of the equation to be like, let's just make the best show possible. That helps tremendously. And
do you find that you guys, because he came up through, you know, the traditional writer's assistant and then all the different levels of writers, and you came at it differently, do you find that you approach material problems, you know, whatever, in different ways?
Completely, I think so. For me, one of the things that we not butted heads about, but just had a conversation about where I had to be like, I don't know if this is the show, and that he had just come from a show that used these devices, this particular device a lot, was just Pops, you know, and I wrote and Pops, for those of you who aren't familiar, are like the 30 Rock Pops, or like the Family Guy Pops, where you make a joke and you go to that specific scene or you go to that specific moment. And I remember maybe the pilot had one moment like that, but our second episode definitely did. And so as we continued to develop scripts, there was a moment where I was like, and I struggled to say it because I couldn't put my finger on why, but I was just like, I don't think our show is a show that does Pops. Like, I don't think that works in our world. And, you know, he thought about it, and he was like, no, you're totally right. And that's a moment that he references as, you know, sort of just breaking out of kind of what we knew and what he knew, and, you know, creating this show together. And
I would say
that helped.
The collaboration between you and Melina, you know, the three of you seem to have a very good, well, I mean, I think it does have to come from you ultimately, you know, because it's from your point of view. But I think that chemistry, you know, like with anything, it's hard. It's like a marriage. As I say, creative marriages are like marriages. They're very hard to get right, You happen to have a three-way marriage with the,
Yeah.
with the three of you guys. But I do think it does kind of that attitude and that that kind of informs the rest of the cast and the rest of the the feel of the show. It's a very happy, collaborative set, as far as I can tell, unless you all secretly.
It is. No, it is, and I think that comes from. I mean, we took a chance on a showrunner who hadn't run a show before. He was I want to say he was an EP or a co-EP.
He was pretty high level, but he's at that level where you take a shot on someone. They've got the experience, but being a showrunner it's hard.
Yes, and when we presented you, I will never forget, Melina. We were looking for directors, and we were struggling, to find someone because to execute the story we knew what we were looking for, but we didn't know what we were looking for. Did we want someone who was established, or do we want someone who, do we want to take a chance on it, someone? And so you were like, bring us names, and don't be afraid to take risks. Risks can be great. They can also be bad and terrible, but they can be great. And I was like, well, if on the risk side, there's this director who I've admired for a while, Melina Matsoukas, who has only done music videos. And then I think we sent you the On the Run trailer, and maybe some. I love her music, Found Love music video, and that was a risk that ended up paying off. And I think just by, I had never had a television show before. He had never run a show before. She had never directed a television show before. So we were all coming into it with fresh eyes and just extremely collaborative and so dedicated to just trying to do the best that we could. And I think we still share that attitude. And of course, we don't agree on everything, but we communicate and we talk things out. And
it doesn't always work out that way, that everybody gets along and everything goes. So it's a very happy ending, and I'm very happy that you
We ain't
all
over yet, though. The ending's not over. Yes.
Is it, I always like this question too, because sometimes when you're working with, when I say new writers, obviously you guys, she's a best-selling author, so it's not like, it's not like she has never done anything in the media. But when I say working with new writers or new to TV, it's hard to explain to somebody what running a show is like, or what the decisions you're going to have to make before you actually do it. So looking, now that you've done a season and right now we are, where are we on you're finishing up the last episodes and we're shooting,
We're shooting episodes 1 and 2. We're done with episodes 1 and 2 today.
So you're into the second season. Looking back, if when you were just starting out on the pilot of the first season, knowing what you know now, would you say there were things that you would do differently, or things that you thought would be more challenging that weren't, or vice versa?
Yeah, I mean, and you tell me differently, but I mean, just in terms of when you're creating something independently on the web, you're wearing a lot of different hats. Just whether you want to or not, if you're a writer,
you're a producer.
Yes, exactly. You're the caterer, you're transpo, you're everything. And so I remember our line producer on the pilot saying, how's everything? Are you feeling stressed? What's going on? And I was like, I kind of feel like this is a vacation because
everybody's doing everything.
Everybody's doing everything. You guys hired a person who just moves plants. That's their role. And they get paid for that. And so I was like, I literally get to wear one hat at a time, which is kind of a luxury. So I remember her walking away from me like, this bitch crazy. Her show not getting picked up. But I genuinely felt that way. And there is such a great team dynamic. But you tell me.
No, I'm glad you like the plant mover. I think. And obviously you had some notoriety before the show, but now that you've been nominated for a Golden Globe, the show obviously did really well and got really good reviews and a lot of attention. For you personally now, when you walk down the street, do people say, Issa,
Broken pussy?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do they sing to you?
Yeah.
Is that weird? How do what's that element of it? Because you're definitely on a bigger stage now.
Yeah, I'm just I'm introverted, but when I do get out, like it just feels like being popular at high school. I'm always just like, I'm looking for the pig's blood at every turn. So it's just I take it in stride, and it's just cool. But.
And you know what's, talk about, we had a conversation about the title Insecure. It meant one thing to me, obviously, because working with Issa, I was kind of like, well, you don't seem that insecure, like in my estimation anyway, but we had a conversation about it. We talk about what the title meant to you and why, because we went through the bad network thing that you sometimes do. It was like, it could be called Issa and her friends, or I don't even know what we did. We go, sometimes we'll have marketing do a list of potential titles just to start conversation. Did we do that?
You guys never said the
Oh,
list.
good, all right.
Like,
well, then they were very bad. But talk about the title, because I thought that was an interesting, what it meant to you.
For me, it just came from just thinking about, again, I'm always thinking about, what the narrative is for Black people and Black women specifically, just by being both of those things. And just what I felt like the show depicted was people who just did not, people I knew, people in my life, people who, again, there's just, I said it before, but there is a narrative, a self-esteem boosting narrative currently that we're magic and that we're flawless and we're, all these incredible things. And I think that's great, but there's so many moments where I wake up and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? And where do I go from here? And I can't be the only one that's doing this wrong. And for me, there's just this overwhelming feeling that I felt like I felt and a lot of my friends felt, and I wanted the title to kind of indicate that. And it was flattering when some of the members of the team were like, you guys seem like two confident women, but I think so much of our experience is, posturing and making sure that we seem okay to the outside world so that we can continue, and we bounce back easily. But I was more interested in the behind.
In the honesty of it, because that's what I think is interesting, is we were probably going down that narrative of, the magical element of you can do no wrong,
right.
Like you're too confident, intelligent, amazing Black women. What could be wrong,
right.
And that's what I thought was interesting, was yours was an incredibly honest take on it. And once she explained that, we're like, okay, it's called Insecure. That's it. And
for the journey, it's like if you start off that way, where do you go from there? It's like, oh, you start off incredible. This is great. And I was more interested in seeing, where these girls go. So it is kind of a prelude to the amazingness that's sure to happen. You have faith. Thank you.
Behind the scenes, diversity is also important to you guys. I think the writing staff, I think in the second season of 8 episodes, 6 of the directors are diverse women or women.
Yes, women.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Diverse women, yes.
Yeah. That has been something that's important to you. Does it, because I remember that in the conversations with Melina, I think we both felt it was important if you're going to honestly show the journey of a Black woman, or what it feels like to be a Black woman, it certainly would be helpful to have a partner for you that has been a Black woman.
And that was
talk
incredible.
About that? I mean, again, that's not to say that nobody of any other race could have done it.
Can tell a story, yeah. But I mean, even in meeting with other directors, and it's not a knock on any directors at all, but there's just a familiarity of, I remember having a conversation with one director about being like, Molly is prototypically an AKA, and then just, them mishearing and being like, she's part of the KKK. How does that work? Like, whoa, that's a twist. And then, having a conversation with Melina and being like, and just falling, oh, she's an AKA, okay, so she's prissy, oh, I get it, why? And there's just a shorthand. And I remember, like, in our meeting with our first in-person meeting with Melina, Prentice, and we were talking, and our other EPs, or also my managers, were there, and they happened to be white. And I remember them just sitting outside of the meeting, like listening to us talk. And then when Melina left, a shout out to Jonathan, he was like, I felt like you guys were speaking a different language. And there was just something comforting just about knowing that, you know, you didn't have to explain certain aspects.
Right.
I didn't have to explain why, you know, I wanted to shoot on this particular street in Inglewood. I wanted to depict this part of the relationship and not another one. So
That's why I think the show is so important for us, because I think, or I like to think anyway, that HBO shows that the authenticity is really important. That I think goes hand in hand with,
Right.
you know, at least making diversity a priority.
Right.
I think it's good for the show.
And it's true to life at the end of the day. And I think you guys recognize that. And even in terms of, you know, making sure that, like every writer isn't Black on the show, but every writer is obviously a human being. And I say that every writer in the show, every writer has a piece or chunk or a morsel of their life in the show. Like it makes for great relatable moments.
There was, in the second episode, there was the term, was it what sway?
Oh, houseway?
Houseway.
Casey.
And I was like, I'm going to take your word for it. I don't know what you're talking about, but I love it.
Kanye West reference.
Yes, no, I know. I remember you told me. Now I know, but I don't try to drop it. I can't get away with it.
Thank you. Thanks for acknowledging that.
Should we? Unless you have questions for me.
I just
Yeah,
in
go
terms
ahead.
of, like, I wanted to ask just in terms, because we kind of came in, you're kind of taking what this show is, kind of on your shoulders, and how that affects what the expectations are for the network moving forward, like just in terms of representation overall.
Well, I
what
think
kind
it's
of pressure you guys are facing.
Here's the nice thing about when you do the benefit of any show is what happens is directors who work, writers who work on Insecure, directors who work on Insecure, we know their work and we go, oh, you know who would be really good on an episode of Crashing? You know who would be really good on an episode here? And so that's why the emphasis on diversity overall is good, because Melina, you know, the minute she walked in my office, I'm like, oh, if we don't hire her, someone else is going to hire. You could just know when you meet her, she's going to go and do amazing things. So if I had another pilot, if I had an episode of TV, you know, I would go to her. There are writers on staff who, you know, it's a way for, it's talent for us, you know. It introduces us to new talent, and it also shows, I think, that, I was personally proud. I don't know that we've ever determined this, but I don't think there's been a African-American writer-performer with her own show since did we ever figure it out? It was like in the 90s, I think it was Wanda Sykes.
Wanda Sykes, yeah.
Right, so the idea that there hasn't been one since then is crazy. So I'm personally proud to have some part in doing that, and I think it just shows, to your point about it's very specific, but you know, I don't need to be a Black woman to find it funny.
Right.
I don't need to be a Black woman to relate to, you know, frustrations about relationships or friends. So it just shows that it doesn't matter whose story it is. There are benefits to diversifying the lineup.
But what's the pipeline, just in general? Like, because I think one of the things that I feel like is important is there's always this catch-22 of like we can't find any diverse writers because you know they're none out there and they can't get the experience if they don't get hired. So
Right.
it's like, how do you?
There's a lot of, you know,
find
it's staffing on shows. Sometimes you don't know where they're going to come from. Sometimes it's like a web show. Sometimes it's someone who's done a movie, someone who's done a director. You know, it just comes from all over, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's no one answer.
You're right. There isn't.
There's no one answer. It can come from anywhere.
It's true.
You know, right?
Yeah, you're right. It was a real answer.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, there's
No,
no
not even close.
because I think about what, you know, where we have, we've had shows come from movies, from magazine articles, actors from all, there's no one way. That's why I think what's interesting about what you've done is you've shown you can also use a web show as in a way, it's kind of like the spec scripts used to be.
Yeah.
Here's a representation of my work, so it's a nice showcase.
Yeah, and I've even heard just in terms of representation out there, agents and managers saying that sometimes they won't meet with, like the first question they'll ask writers now is like, where can I see your work online?
Yeah.
And I have found that that's leveled the playing field significantly, but it's also made it a lot harder because I think for me, the barrier to entry was a lot lower because people didn't care about production quality. So it was okay that I was broke and putting content out there
Yeah.
that looked shitty. Like people were reaching
Yeah.
out and being like, hey, your lighting sucks. Can I please help you? Can I? And I think now people are expecting more of a production value. So it's made it a bit harder, but you can still find a creative way to
Right,
create.
we did a drama pilot with a guy who came out of the Sundance Labs, Kenan Warsami, and it was about the Somali American community in Minneapolis, right? So it was a very, very specific community, but the idea was it was about the immigrant experience in the United States. So it didn't, the details mattered, but ultimately the themes, whether they were Somali or Mexican or Italian or whatever, the struggles that, children butting up against their parents, how American do you want to be, how much to give, he was a first-time writer-director, so, we took a shot on him. We're still working on, we did the pilot, and now he's refining it because he wanted to make some changes to it. So he came to us from Sundance Labs. And he had done like a short film, I think. So you just never know where it's going to come from.
Got it.
Yeah, from your writing staff.
Which is great, which is why I'm excited about. I'm
not going to pull them. I'm not going to pull them all the way, but that's part of it too.
Well, even just the first look opportunity, just
Yeah.
in terms of being able to mine from, in the same way that we're currently doing on YouTube, where we find other unrepresented writer creators, and that's unrepresented in terms of management and industry representation, and of course underrepresented in media, and distributing their web series. Now we're able to do that.
Yeah.
Currently, we just, I think, maybe hired or about to hire a supervising producer for one of our new shows with you guys. So I'm
Yeah.
very excited about that opportunity as well.
Yeah.
So we're working on it.
Good.
Well, we're going to make you a part of the conversation as well. If you have a question, you can raise your hands. No. Anybody? Questions? Don't be shy. Okay. And just wait for a mic to be brought to you right there. Terrific.
Hello. Oh, hello.
Hi.
Hi, Casey. Hi, Issa. I'm Christy Joy, and my question is, you were mentioning earlier that the expectations for you changed, bringing your show from the web to television, so the expectations were different. So I'm just wondering if you can elaborate on some of those expectations and how you've had to adjust for the transition.
I guess I was in the fast-paced internet world where I could have an idea the same day, write it, put it up, and have instant feedback immediately and continue. And for me, that was kind of just a way of operating. And I had never developed within a system. Like my first opportunity to develop was with ABC, and that was trying to create, a pilot. And that was something that, I developed with them, and I didn't have any expectations, and I felt like my voice kind of just became blah and mush because I was more about, oh, what are you guys looking for? That was it, and I don't know if that's something that is common in terms of people asking you and new writers coming in and asking a network, like, what is it that you're looking for? And I think that's the approach that I had. I was so focused on what I felt like fit their network and what they wanted to see that I didn't think about the story that I wanted to tell and didn't focus on that. And I always say that I was eager to please in a way that made my voice kind of irrelevant. And the reason they brought me in the first place was to have something to say. And so I think for me, my expectations were I'm supposed to make these executives happy. And that ended up not being the right way of thinking. And so by the time I got to HBO, after having that experience, and everybody was super nice and gracious, and it's something that I had to realize within myself, like, oh, I have a specific story that I want to tell. I have a specific point of view, and that's why I'm here, and I need to tap into that. And a lot of my experience there was just making sure that it was the purest possible, and to get out of the head of like, oh, if they're giving me notes because this will make them happy, it's like, no, it's just to hone this specific element. Thank you.
Question? Let's go right on this side of the room right here.
Hi, this question is for both of you. When you're writing a pilot, I've seen pilots that are sometimes a mishmash of everything the writer wants to put out there thematically and character-wise throughout the season. And then I've seen pilots that are very simple, that are just, the first episode of what the show should be. And I'm just curious, in both of your experiences, what you would recommend as the kind of best way to create that first pilot.
I think, you have to balance, you have to tell an entertaining story regardless, right? So that should be, sometimes I think story is sometimes the hardest thing to figure out, especially in a pilot, because you're not only telling the story of the pilot, but you're kind of setting the arc for the series. So it's a tough thing to get right, to do those two things. But in terms of the themes that you want to lay out there, that's something, I think to Issa's point, you can't, whatever you're doing, you have to do what feels right to you. Always, you hear the feedback, but as I always say, if something doesn't feel right, don't do it. It's your pilot and you should feel good about it. So you have to kind of trust your gut, I would say, that's my kind of simplified advice, I guess.
Do all networks ask the why today? Is that a secret ingredient?
No, I think I think we were one of the things we talk about when you're thinking about a pilot, for us anyway, is like, why are we dropping into a world now? Like it's not necessarily like a premise pilot is like, the parents move into and chaos ensues. But I think it's more about like, what dynamics are we going to see change? Like why do you want to follow somebody, on this specific journey? So sometimes that is a dynamic change. Famously, with The Sopranos, you had a mobster deciding he needed therapy. It could be, there's a lot of different ways to skin it, but it's just kind of like, it makes you question like, what journey are we going on and why would a viewer care and what is going to fuel it, story-wise.
Next question. Let's go right over here. This one right there. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, my question is a little bit simple, but it's really for both of you. So I'm curious, you mentioned about having the relationships within the office with the white people and black people. Do you ever feel like when you guys are discussing those things, do you kind of really go for it, or do you feel like sometimes like, oh gosh, that might hurt their feelings? And for you, Casey, is it kind of an eye opener, when she shares those things?
No, I think that's great. It would not be possible to hurt. Issa should not be worrying about our feelings or anybody's feelings. She should be doing what her experience is.
No, so, I love that, but I was just curious, and so
I think it's great. I think it's a great eye opener for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I can relate to that. I mean, I understand that you were mentioning too, some of it's specific, but a lot of us can relate to some of those things about touching the hair or certain dynamics that go on in the office. So I was just kind of curious if you ever feel like sometimes, I mean, do you just kind of go for it, or do you feel like?
Yeah, we definitely have a go for it policy. We never say, oh, is this gonna hurt white feelings or anything like that.
Don't worry about white feelings.
Yeah, I think we just tell the real, like we tell stories. We go around the writer's room, telling specific stories that are true and honest. And then, sometimes it can be given, sometimes it can be uncomfortable hearing it out loud and just being like, ooh, does she know that this is about her? But I mean, for the most part, no, they haven't been about you yet. But yeah, otherwise we want to tell the truth.
Casey, I'm curious about the why today question, and from an executive standpoint, the people who get to ask that question. And is there an intention and a pathway within HBO for executives to be looking at who is asking those questions, how to make sure that that's as diverse as the writers that are coming into the room? Is there, beyond paying lip service, is there a way to mentor, to bring in new people to be able to ask that question?
Yeah, but the why today is more of a it's kind of an across the board. It's not specific to anybody's journey. It's more of a structural thing. Like, why are we dropping into whatever world it is? It doesn't really matter. But as to mentoring, we have a lot of. There's a woman named Kelly Edwards. We have something called an Access program where it's both writers and directors. And we've had a couple of success stories. We fund basically short, I don't know if you call it short pilots basically for both writers and directors. A couple of our folks have gone through the program have booked directing jobs, writing jobs. And it's a mentorship with the executives, and you have one, and I think we just had a guy book a directing job. I can't remember what show it was, but it's real. I mean, it's the people coming out of it. It's not. I mean, these are serious people getting great opportunities. So I think we're having some pretty good success with it.
What's the program called?
It's called Access, HBO Access.
Great, we have time for one more question. On this side, good one. Okay, right over there.
Oh, thank you. Hi, Isa. You mentioned earlier that you went to Stanford and talked about the pilot that you developed there. I work with young filmmakers, and I'm wondering what education you got that you felt really prepared you, and maybe what education you feel would be good for someone who wants to get into this business and is much younger.
Zero education. Stanford didn't have a film program until my senior year, so I couldn't go back. It was just like, oh, really, y'all? So a lot of it was just self-taught and then taking courses. Like I took, a course at the New York Film Academy, but I'm more of a hands-on person, and I was like, the money I'd use for film school, I'd rather use to make something. But then I had another, writing partner at the time who wasn't as hands-on and loved, meeting people and loved the producing aspect and the writing aspect, and went to USC and got her education that way. And a lot of people that she met there, she actually, in a meeting post grad school, and a lot of people she met in her school, she ended up bringing to help me produce Awkward Black Girl and the crew that she met there. So our paths were different, but we kind of ended up in the same spot. So I think it just depends on who you are.
Well, thank you so much, Casey.
Thank you.
It's an honor to have you here.